All right, welcome back. And today we are going to be talking about the law of cosines. So far this week we reviewed about SOHCAHTOA, which remember we use SOHCAHTOA to help us solve right triangles. Now, if it's not a right triangle, whether it's obtuse or acute, we can use law of sines, which we learned yesterday. However, as it says here, we can only do that if we have two of the same letter. And what we mean by that is both an angle and the side opposite of it. Okay, so for example, if we have this letter A and the side opposite little a, if that's the case, then we can use law of sines to find, as long as we have one other piece of information, we can find the other side. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what do we do if we don't have both angle and a side that match up together that are opposite of each other. Okay, and if that's the case, we can use another formula called law of cosines. Now this is a little bit more complicated than yesterday's, but we'll practice. We'll get it down. Also, there's a note here. It says, when we start solving with law of cosines, don't switch over to law of sines halfway through the problem. I know it's tempting because once you get a little more information figured out, it seems like you could use law of sines. However, there's something called ambiguous cases. We're not going to talk about those this week. I'll talk about that next week a little bit. We'll touch on that a little bit. But with ambiguous cases, you have to be careful because as you do it, it appears that you have a correct answer, but when you plug it back in, it does not actually work. And this can happen sometimes if we switch between them or in a certain situation with law of cosines and in certain triangles. So we'll talk about that more next week. Don't worry about it for today. So what are the law of cosine formulas? Over here, depending on which one we're finding, A, B, or C, we've got a squared would equal b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. Okay, and likewise b squared and c squared are there. And that's if we're finding a missing side. Now, if we move this around, we can change it so we can find a missing angle. So I don't know if you can tell from this top one to here, but to get cosine a by itself, they first add, if we add the 2bc cosine a over, and then subtract the a squared over, so then we have b squared plus c squared minus a squared. That's right up here. Then to get cosine a by itself, we just divide by that 2bc, and we could have that here. Okay. Now, when we actually find this, we'd have to take the inverse cosine to get a by itself. And up here, to get a little a by itself, you got to take the square root of all of this. So when we're solving, in my opinion, the first thing we should do is let's figure out what is our third side. Okay, so we're going to use this over here. Now we're trying to find b, so we'll use b squared. So we're going to have b squared will be equal to, now a squared, little a is 2. Oops, let me fix that. So 2 squared plus c squared, which is 4, so 4 squared. And then it's minus 2 times a times c. So 2 times 2 times 4 times the cosine of angle B, which in our case is 45 degrees. Okay. Now, if we type this in, we will find what little b is, assuming we also take the square root of it all. Okay, so when we're doing this, also keep in mind, we have to be in degree mode. Okay, so let me make a note up here. You need to make this note. This is the case for this entire chapter, but some of us are going to forget, and it will cost us. Okay, and it's really hard for me if you're not in degree mode to know quite what you did, because your answers will be all over the place. Okay, so we go to degree mode. To do that, just go to mode, go down, go over to degree, hit enter. All right, and then I can hit clear, and we're good. Okay, so now, as we said, to find little b, we'd have to take the square root of both of these. So I'm going to take the square root of this entire thing, because then that will cancel out the b squared, and we'll be left with just b. So to do this, I'll do second square root. And now we have 2. Now right here, this x squared, that'll come in handy on this formula. So do you see how that squares it automatically? Plus 4 squared, and then minus, and then whatever we have here. So I'm going to put this all in parentheses. So 2 times 2 times 4 times the cosine of 45. Close that, close the whole thing, and now I can hit enter. And as you can see, we get 2.294, right? It keeps going and going on. And here's the thing. Today, with law of cosines, if we're using that, let's go ahead with sides. I want us to go to the hundredths place. If we just go to the tenths, I don't know if you guys can see here, but 2.9, that's quite a bit off, almost 0.05 off. That'll be enhanced throughout this process as we're finding the other angles. It gets squared, it gets divided, it can get enhanced quite a bit, and it can cause some discrepancies. So in order to kind of eliminate that, when we're using law of cosines, if we are finding a side, we want to go to the hundredths place. So here, 2.947, the 7 rounds up, so 2.95. Now we have found little b. We have 2 steps left. We need to find angle A and angle C. Once again, because of rounding, this can cause some problems. Depending on the order you find it in, you might get slightly different answers, because after you find one, we can just subtract them from 180 to find the third one. So what I recommend you do, let's just all get in the habit. Let's go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with angle A, if you are able to. Okay, now sometimes you're not able to, maybe. That's okay, but if you're able to, let's go in alphabetical order. So angle A, to do this, we will take, so the cosine of A equals, and then we're going to fill it in right here. Now, B squared we just found, so this is all on top. So 2.95 squared plus, let me scroll so we can see. Okay, so C was 4, so plus 4 squared, minus A is 2, so minus 2 squared. And then we'll divide all that by 2 times B, which is 2.95, times C, which is 4. Now, when we type this into our calculator, remember we're going to do the inverse cosine. So once again, double check up here. Yep, we're in degrees, so we're good. So I go second cosine, which gives me inverse cosine. Now on top, I'm going to put another parenthesis. So we have 2.95 over here. Hit the squared button, so squared, plus 4 squared, minus 2 squared. I'll close that, divided by, and then on the bottom, on the denominator, we'll do 2 times 2.95 times 4, and we'll close that. I'll close the whole thing and hit enter. And as you can see, 28.69. Now, when we're finding the angle, we can just round to the tenths, so that's fine. So we'll get 28.7 degrees. So angle A, 28.7 degrees. All right, now at this point, we know 2 of the angles, 45 and 28.7. So let's go ahead and just find that last angle. This should be easy. So we do 45 plus 28.7. So if we add those together, and we get 73.7, and now all we have to do is take that away from 180. So 180 minus this 73.7. And we will get 106.3 as our answer here. And that will be our value for C. Okay, so angle C has 106.3. Now, let's go ahead. We're going to practice a few more times. Now, on the back here, it's a little different because 4, 5, 6. This time we have all 3 sides. Okay, so sometimes there's a couple different situations. Sometimes you might have 2 sides with the angle in between, so SAS. Sometimes you might have 3 sides, SSS. Now there's one situation, angle side side. You remember that from geometry, it doesn't prove a triangle is congruent. And we'll see that in here. There's kind of two different cases. We will not talk about that today. We'll talk about it a little bit next week. But if we look this first one, I recommend what we do, our example 2, I recommend we draw this triangle. Okay. Once again, some of you might not think that's necessary, but I think it just helps us see everything. Okay. So let's go ahead and label. A would be across from 4. We'll put B up here, across from 5, and C is across from 6. Okay, we need to find those 3 angles. Now, if we do use this method and find 2 of them, then we can be done. Okay, or we can use our logic and the knowledge of a triangle adds up to 180 to find the third. So the first one, if I were you, I mean, it's totally up to you, but I'm just going to go in order. So cosine of A. Now the cosine of A will equal, then right here, B squared plus C squared minus A squared over 2BC. So B squared is 5, so 5 squared, plus 6 squared minus 4 squared. Now all of that will be over 2 times, let's see, B is 5, C is 6. So once again, pull up our calculator. We want to do inverse cosine. So second cosine. Now on the top, so I'll put parentheses, then it's 5 squared plus 6 squared minus 4 squared divided by 2 times 5 times 6. Close it again for the cosine, hit enter, and as you can see for A, we get a value of 41.4 degrees. Okay, now we do the same thing. I'm just going to keep going. Let's find cosine of B. So cosine of B, or I guess we're going to find B because we're going to do the inverse cosine. So on top, once again, we'll use this. So A squared plus C squared minus B squared. So A was 4, so 4 squared plus 6 squared minus 5 squared equals, now it's 2 times 4 times 6. And we will find what B equals. Okay, so same thing, we start with second cosine, then put another parenthesis, and we'll do 4 squared plus 6 squared minus 5 squared, and then close your parenthesis, divided by, now parenthesis again, 2 times 4 times 6, close the parenthesis, close it for the cosine, hit enter, and let's see, 4 squared plus 6 squared minus 5 squared, and 2 times 4 times 6, so we get 55.77 here. Now we are going to round to the nearest tenth, so 55.8 is what we will get. And from here, the last one is the easiest. We have 2 angles. We can just find that third one. Over here, I'll just do what is 41.4 plus 55.8. So we'll get 2, we'll carry the 1. That'll give us 7. 5 plus 4 is 9, so 97.2. We'll take 180 minus that 97.2. And you can do all the carrying and stuff if you want. That's totally fine, or we can just use this to help us. So either way, you will get 82.8, or you should get that as your value of C. All right. I'm guessing some of you are starting to catch on, so if you want to go do the delta math, that's fine. The rest of you stay and watch the end. Keep in mind, when as we're wrapping up this quarter, we got to make sure everything gets turned in this week. Okay, so let's get everything in, especially if you haven't done the test. I did put those grades in, so we can now see how we're doing. So Okay, this final one. So if I have an A, B, and a C, the C is 5, the B is 8, the A is 10. We'll do that same approach. So with cosine, and you've got the formulas there at the top. I know we can't see them on screen, but cosine of A equals B squared, so 8 squared, plus C squared, 5 squared, minus A squared, which is 10 squared. All that over 2 times B times C. And we will find what A is. So we always start second cosine, then put your parenthesis, and then 8 squared plus 5 squared, minus 10 squared. We close the parenthesis, divided by 2 times 8 times 5. Close the parenthesis, close the cosine, hit enter. And as you can see, when we round that, we're going to get 97.9 degrees. So that's cosine, or that's the value of A. So now let's keep going. Let's find B, and then we can use our knowledge of triangles to find that last one. So cosine of B equals, so instead of B squared, it'll be A squared. So 5 squared, let's see, plus, no, whoops. Well, it would be fine either way, but A squared would actually be 10 squared plus C is 5 squared minus B squared, so minus 8 squared. All that over 2 times A times C, so 10 times 5. All right, so we go ahead and we'll do second cosine again. Put the parentheses, start us off with 10 squared plus 5 squared minus 8 squared divided by, in parentheses again, 2 times 10 times 5. And we'll close it all the way and hit enter. As you can see, we get 52.4 for B. Okay, we're almost done to find C. All I got to do, let's add those two together. So we get 3, carry the 1. That gives us, let's see, that's 10. So 0, carry the 1, all the way to 15. So 150.3. So we take that 180 minus the 150.3. Once again, if you need to use your calculator, that's fine. We will get 29.7 degrees. That is what we get for C. So if you have any questions, please send me an email and let me know. This is pretty much it for quarter 3. This is our last assignment today. Next couple days are kind of a chance to get everything turned in, get caught up, and let me know if you need anything. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.